they become nice people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Work with me.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם, לתאר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני השם תתארו. So this is the first mimer on Yom Kippur, since the parsha is dealing with the avoda of Yom Kippur.
Whereabouts is this
in
the
this
Sidra?
What?
Whereabouts is this exactly in the Sidra? It's like Sheni? No.
No, it's the very end. Very end. We read it today. So it's Sheni, at the end of Sheni, almost the end. So this is a really important mimer because it's from, first of all, it's probably the earliest thing we have from Liadi.
Yeah.
We have a couple of things maybe a little bit earlier, but nothing as long as this, and nothing as revolutionary as this one. From Hey Tishrei, Tavkuf Samach Bet. Again, he came to Liadi in the summer of Tavkuf Samach Aleph, 1801, and it was still 1801 when he said this mimer.
So this isn't a short mimer, this is a long.
Very long. It's relatively long, and it's phenomenal. Okay. What does it mean when it says he will atone for you? It should have said Hashem will atone for you. God will atone for you.
Okay, so
it doesn't say who. It doesn't say who. What?
The Kohanim.
No, it's Hashem. It just doesn't say that it's Hashem. Of course it's Hashem. Who's going to cleanse you? Who's going to atone for you? Hashem is. From all your sins. Before Hashem you will be purified. Right? So there's two. By the way, this is a big deal in the Gemara also. This switch from kapara means, I guess, atonement, to tahara, which is purification. What?
Kapara means to
cover. Right, like the kaporet, which covered the ark. So he's going to, as it were, hide them. Okay? But tahara is to cleanse, is to purify completely.
It's the second stage.
And in the first part,
make sure Zerdanius.
Right.
What's it called?
Schlius. So in the Gemara that we just started Yuma, on Daf Yomi. So we're on Daf Zayin, I think, today. Or Chet, maybe Chet.
Okay.
So
I love that, so I can be ready to be kind of.
So at the end of the first chapter, at the very end of the Masechet, so the whole Masechet was talking about kapara. At the very end, there's Rabbi Akiva who says, Ashreichem Yisrael, lifnei mi atem mita'arim u'mi meta'er etchem. He suddenly changes it, like here in the pasuk, from kapara. The whole Masechet talked about what the Kohen Gadol does for atonement, and in the end, Rabbi Akiva says, "But who in the end cleanses you? Who purifies you? Hashem." So it follows this pasuk that concludes the description of the service of Yom Kippur in the Torah. So in any case, the big question he's asking here is, why does it not say who it is? So we know the answer, because we know Chassidus, right? Lifnei Hashem titaru. What is Lifnei Hashem? Not before Hashem in the sense of you're standing in front of Hashem. Not in front of Hashem you shall be atoned, but before Hashem. Meaning that there is a higher level than the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay? Lifnei Hashem, many times. That's what it means. Lifnei Hashem is equal to David squared, right? It's 14 squared, 196. Lifnei Hashem. David is always before Hashem. What does it mean? That even if you've done an Aveira, there's a higher level. And so that higher level, you're always before Hashem at that higher level. You're always before God. So that's the short answer. So, but he's going to give a much longer answer.
What happens to the Seret that they show everybody?
Sorry?
What happens to the Seret, to the video that they show everybody of your whole life? And it comes, they see all the good and the bad and the ugly. And then it comes to the bit where you've done Tshuva. What happens?
Wow, it changes the whole meaning. It doesn't change the movie, it just changes the meaning.
Oh, you still see the same...
Good, it's still the same events, they can't be any different.
Oh, you don't see like a black screen or something? No. I always wondered what happens. So what do you mean it changes the meaning?
Because the whole introduction of The whole history of humanity has always been adding more dimensions to human experience. So tshuva really is introspection. You can't do tshuva without introspection. So tshuva comes and says, before you acted without thinking about what you're doing. Right? Meaning you didn't think it through all the way. It's not that you didn't do it on purpose. You did it on purpose. But you didn't understand what the repercussions would be. Right? You didn't understand what it would mean. Tshuva means that you introspect. And you begin to say, wait a minute, one day I'm not going to be here anymore. Is this what I want to leave behind me? Is this the life that I want to relive when I'm a soul in heaven? No, this is not what I want. So what can I do to change it? So that introspection in and of itself changes the meaning of everything. Because you know what? Now, the very fact that you did these averas, that you did these things that were wrong, they led you to having a higher understanding of what your purpose in life was.
But doesn't the kapara mean hiding? It means that part of the film is hidden.
It's hidden in the sense that Hashem is not looking at it, but you'll still look at it.
Shame.
But we know, even though it doesn't say here openly, it doesn't say it explicitly, that Yom Kippur is a day of tshuva, of I guess penitence, but there's no of returning to God. The purpose of tshuva is to bring the divine soul back to its source. As it was before it experienced what we call the order of descent, the evolution, Seder Ishtalshalus, as the soul went through different levels of tzimtzum, different levels of contraction, in order to become capable of enclothing within a human body, within a physical body. So it needs to return back to its source before this descent. This is a quote from the Zohar. It's interesting that they didn't put a footnote on it. Then it was, in its pristine state from its source, it was included, it was part of this source and the root of all worlds, which is O Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which is the infinite light of Hashem. As it says in the Zohar, on the verse, he breathed into him the breath of life, that he who breathed in, breathed it from himself, from his very essence. What does this mean? It means that the breath, the air, as it were, in this symbol, the air, as it were, in this parable, came from the very source of God. And that's where it came, that's where the soul came from. Okay? So this we know. Remember, this is just a couple of years after he published the Tanya. Truthfully, the first three chapters of the Tanya came out as a mimer many years beforehand. So there was a whole order. But this Zohar that is now going to become a source for much of what we're going to say, even though he's not going to say it explicitly. So we're going to have to figure it out. Because he says, tshuva means going back to the source. And the source means that the soul, the divine soul that was blown into the nostrils of man, came from the infinite light, the infinite revelation of God. It was in God's very essence. But as it came down the levels, in order to enclose in a body, it changed from essence to essence. From different types, it received different types of essence. At first it has to become like a chomer yuli. Then it has to become tzura. Then it has to become chomer with tzura. So it has all kinds of levels of ishtalshalus. And then finally it arrived at the physical body of man in this world. So now the purpose is, as the Maggid taught, that Hashem created something from nothing. And the purpose of man is to take the something and return it to its source in the nothing. Again, the nothing doesn't mean nothing. It means in the nothingness, and what cannot be grasped. So the avoda, according to this, the service of Yom Kippur, is that a person has to search within himself until he comes to the place where he feels that it's stripped of all the different vestments that I put my soul into. Meaning it's like stripping myself of all my actions and coming back to the source as it was. And that's the avoda of Yom Kippur. It's to feel that layer after layer is being removed. And by the way, there's a counterpart physically. The fact that we don't eat, it's like going through a few layers of food in the body. Not too many, because how many can you do in 24 hours? But you do a few layers. There's an interesting story from Irving Yalom, who's probably the most famous psychoanalyst today in the world. He's already in his 80s. He lives in California, and he wrote a book called The Executioner's Song and Other Tales of Psychotherapy. He's written a lot of books. He's very, very sensitive. So in this book, I think it's in The Executioner's Song, he writes of a woman that came to him, was very obese, and she wanted to lose weight, but she had always failed. So she decided maybe she needs to go to a psychologist and try it with him. So he worked with her, and he says over the period of a year, she took off 100 pounds, or 50 kilograms or 40 kilograms, whatever it was. And he said that every amount of kilograms that came off, she had like a deja vu, like she went back in time into who she was when she was putting on those kilograms. Because the whole idea was that she was eating to run away from things. It was like a defense mechanism. So every time that kilograms came off, she went back. It was like she was peeling off layers of her depression, of all her different problems. So that's why she was failing, apparently, because she couldn't get rid of the psychological problems that were causing her to eat. So because of that, she needed the psychological help to take the kilograms off and keep them off.
So what happened in the end?
I don't remember what happens in the end. I don't think she puts it back on, but I don't think they finish. For some reason, I don't remember. But that's an idea. So, if this is true, that one day a year we take the neshama, we take the soul back to its source, so the question can be asked, why in the first place did the neshama come down? What good is it? Again, the neshama is not the how should we say it? The neshama is not the moral aspect of man. It's not the part that chooses. It's not that without the neshama you wouldn't have choice. You wouldn't be lacking. What would you be lacking? You'd be lacking a part of God above in you. But it says that even though we all have a part of God above in us, the Tanya says that that's not enough to conquer the evil inclination. It says Hashem has to help you. Because at most it'll be equal. And even if you're like a Beinoni, like the perfect Beinoni, so to win against the evil inclination, Hashem has to tip the scales. Because you never have enough strength by yourself. So what's the neshama? The neshama is not what tips the scales. It's not the decision, it's not needed in order for a person to live a true and just life.
How can you do that without neshama?
Because it has a brain. The brain can understand that this is the right thing to do, that's the wrong thing to do, and you should do it.
That's very dry and boring.
Why? Who said that the neshama makes it interesting? Doesn't make it interesting. The interesting is because you're battling against the evil inclination. And will Hashem come to your aid or not? That's what makes it interesting. But the neshama it's almost like it's along for the ride. What benefit do you get from it?
That's a good question.
So that's the question he's going to address. Because that's what he's asking. What in the world does the neshama need, the soul, this part of God above, need in order to come down into our physical world. For what purpose? She went from a very high place to a very low place. And a person needs to work very hard to return it to its source. But since you want to return to its source, what did we gain? And would it be that when it returns to the source, it's as it was when it came down? It's interesting, it says many ways. Because the Chazal say, so this is according to, again, he says it here. In Chazal, it's all paths, all travels are dangerous. So the neshama coming down from where it was into the human body, and then going back to where it was, and not being blemished by the whole ganze Geschäft, is a big chiddush. It doesn't happen very often. So why take the risk that something will happen in the neshama? Neshama is almost like so you built a robot, and the robot can do everything. And then you decide, I'm going to put my only copy of some important sefer inside the robot. Why? Why do you want to keep it there? It's not helping the robot do anything. It's just a book. It's just a very valuable book. Well, what's it giving? How is the robot functioning any different because it now has a neshama, or it has this book? Do we function any different because we have a neshama?
We come with a neshama inside a robot. The neshama comes from a neshama.
Yeah, I said a book. A very, very rare book that you have, and keep it inside the robot. What for? Why take the risk? Maybe something will happen. Maybe the robot will short circuit and everything will be burnt inside. Too bad for the book. Pirush. Sorry. צריך להבין מה שכתוב.
כי
השם אלוקיך.
כי השם אלוקיך אש.
אש אוכלהו. So to understand the answer to this question, we have to understand what it means that Hashem, your God, is like fire. Why is he likened to burning fire? Why would the pasuk, why would Moshe Rabbeinu compare God to burning fire? So he says, the reason is, Pirush Haderech Mashal, as a parable. כשם שהאש אינו מאיר ואינו נתפס להיקרא בשם אור ואש כלל עד שנאחז בפתילה ובעצים. I think here they made a mistake.
Yeah.
As a parable, in the same way that fire is not called illuminating, okay, the fire does not illuminate.
It does. Make a big fire, make a big bonfire. Sure.
No, you have to understand how he looks at the world. His understanding of the world is fire is elemental.
Okay.
As an element, it exists. When you light it, you bring it out from its hidden existence and you bring it into reality. So the elemental fire, as the Ramban, as Nachmanides says, on the pasuk ve'aretz hayta tohu va'vo v'choshech al pnei tehom. So says the Ramban, v'choshech al pnei tehom, that's the elemental fire. That the elemental fire is dark. It doesn't shine. It doesn't illuminate. Until when, he says the Alter Rebbe, until it's caught onto some physical object that it can burn. If it has a physical object to hold on to, then the elemental fire becomes the fire that we see. And that fire has light coming out. Another way of saying it is that whatever's burning, whatever's going to burn now, you don't see it illuminating. Take a piece of wood. In a moment you're going to throw it into the fire. But right now you look at the piece of wood. Is it shining?
No.
No. Why not? Because the fire is not caught onto it. Right. The moment the fire catches onto it, chemically what's happening? The energy from the fire is breaking bonds in the wood, and that's releasing electrons, which release photons. Not really releasing the electrons, but moving them. And combustion causes photons to be thrown out, and you get light. You get an illumination. So that everything was there, except something was missing. What was missing? Connecting, right? Connect the energy from the fire with the fuel, with whatever's going to burn. So, in the same way, he says, as you need something for the fire to grab onto in order to be seen and in order to give warmth. The same way Hashem is. We'll see how. So again, because the fire itself, remember the picture
always
of...
wants to go up.
Okay, because everything wants to return to its source. Where's the source of the fire? Between the air, the Earth's atmosphere, and, again, the elemental fire. It's from the air, the atmosphere, to the moon.
But hasn't everything got a shorish in the Maila?
What do you mean?
Doesn't everything? So you said the fire has a shorish high, so he wants to return to it. But all things have a high shorish.
Cool. But this is not lemala. This is not the spiritual shorish, in the sense that it's a spiritual thing. We're talking about physical things. This is elemental fire. This is how they saw it. By the way, we say it the same way. They're called there's stupid conspiracists and there's the advanced ones, the ones that have that are intelligent.
Right.
So the intelligent ones, so they say, how could a human being have gone to the moon? Because you have to get through the Van Aken belts.
Because it's made out of cream cheese. Cream cheese.
The Van Aken, I think they're called Van Aken, whatever they're called, is a energy source which is like traveling through a 1,000,000-volt microwave. How did the human beings make it through? You can't make it through. You have to have special materials in your capsule to save you from this energy. There's no way they had that in 1968 and 69 and 70 and 71.
Why not?
Because they didn't. And the capsule didn't weigh enough. There's answers to it. In NASA, they think of everything. They had this question. They had a big question about how are we going to get people. I remember what they're not Van Aken. There's something else. I can't remember what they're called. So they had answers how to get through it. How to take a human being and get him alive through it. It was a big deal. It was something to spend a lot of time thinking about. It wasn't that simple. So we have a ton of energy between the Earth, its atmosphere, right? And the cosmic rays usually don't make it through the atmosphere because the air breaks them up. But outside there's a ton of cosmic rays, and there's all this energy, and there's energy there. So he says that's the elemental fire. Don't think of elemental fire as just some kind of physical thing that you see. It's something you can't see. It's dark. Makes some sense. So this is not when you say that everything has a root above. When you say everything has a root above, you mean a spiritual root. Here we mean something that with the right instrument you can measure. It's supposed to be something you can grasp with your eyes.
Somebody's measured it?
Of course. We measure all these things. So anyway, so the fire is always, all the energy is trying to escape to where it was initially. That's even true about the sunlight. Right? The sunlight comes down and it hits the earth, and some of it is captured, some of it is absorbed by the ground, but a lot of it is reflected back. And what's reflected back, it's reflected into space. And that's why you see the earth as something glowing, and why we see the moon as something glowing. Because it reflects this energy. So anyway, it wants to go back to its source.
Has a lower level of energy than the sun.
Right, of course it's lower. Not everything can escape, but at least it wants to. It wants to escape. And by the way, that's even before they knew about Huygens, whatever his name was, the guy who started optics. Even before they knew about reflection and refraction and all of that. weren't stupid. They saw that the sun's light bounces off the moon. They understood, probably, that the sun's light bounces off of the earth also. Why didn't they think about the same thing about the planets? Maybe they did. Maybe they did. The planets, maybe they did also. The stars, why not? Because the stars, they understood to be something, it's either too far away or its own source of light. As we think today. Today we think that all the stars are like the sun, that they're their own source of light. In any case, so Hashem too is likened to this, that the energy that he's putting out wants to return to the source. So we have to understand what this means. Kach hinei dvar Hashem. So the words of God that created the heavens and the earth, shebo shamayim na'asu v'ruach piv kol tzva'am, be'asara ma'amrot nivra olam, the 10 utterances with which he created our reality. Yehi o, amongst them are, let there be light, and yehi rakia, let there be a firmament. All of these things that God, as it were, said, halochot devari ka'esh, anderech mashal. The prophet Jeremiah likens it to fire, meaning liyoteva uvchinat istalkut li mikora v'shorsha dechola, that its nature is to want to go back to its source. So Hashem said, let there be a firmament, and the words, let there be a firmament, want to go back to their source. They don't want to continue to be the basis of a firmament. They want to go back to where they came from. They want to be reflected back into their source.
And if they succeed?
And there's no firmament.
No heavens?
No heavens, no earth.
So Hashem's not going to let that happen.
So how does he not let that happen? But then he needs the soul. That's what he's going to say in a moment. But let's see what he says. As it is by God, it is also by man. This is a tough explanation now. Because he's going to say that by us too, when we talk, the words that we say want to return to their source.
What's the source of talk?
So let's see. He says, Hadibur miyisod ha'esh. When a person speaks, he's using the element of fire. Why? Ki yotze mehevel halev derech hakaneh. Because as we see that when a person speaks, where's the air coming from? It's coming from the lungs and going out through the larynx and through the the windpipe. And in the body, the heart represents the element of fire. The heart is considered to be hot, like fire. Okay? The brain is considered to be cool and wet. And therefore the different permutations of the word halev, the heart, can spell hevel. Hevel means hot wind, or just wind that comes out. Halev, as we said, and lahav. Lahav is like a flame. Lehava. So it all has to do with heat. And exactly how this is regarding God, we won't explain here because it's too hard to explain right now. We'll explain it somewhere else. Just to say it in short.
Does it explain it somewhere else?
Just to say it yeah, of course. But just to say it in short, the explanation is that what he's talking about here is the heart is like the mind. He's saying that when you want to say something, the first experience is that the words don't want to come out. They would rather return to the mind. Their natural inclination is to go back to their source. You have to work hard to get the words out. The whole idea of being able to mouth words is a tremendous chiddush. To say it another way, animals may think, but they can't speak. Because to speak requires being able to throw out something from yourself. You have to have the whole structure here that can take something from within you and take it out from you. What's easier for you, to talk or to think?
Oh, interesting question. Probably to think.
For every person, it's easier to think. Some people talk without thinking, right?
That's another problem.
But that's something else. It's easier to think, and it's more than that. If I'm preparing an article in my mind, it's much easier to feel that I have it down in my mind than it is to actually write it.
Yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning, you get the most beautiful articles lying in your bed. Sit up and try and write them out.
Right. Right. Because it's a problem. It's a problem how to get things out. It's a chiddush that man can do that. So dibur, even the word davar, it's very hard etymology exactly what it means. But one of the possibilities is that bar means to take something out. Okay? Like berur, like bar, which is from the tevin, motz, bar, and tevin. It means that you're taking the husks out of the wheat. The bar is the husk. It's what you take out. There's an understanding when it says bereshit bara. In the beginning God created means in the beginning God pushed out. He pushed out from himself, as it were, so that there could be something outside of himself. So dibur is the human act of creation. Because what? No, it's yesh miyesh. But the chiddush is, when I look at your dibur, it's yesh me'ayin. Because I can't see your machshava, I can't see your thought. But the idea here is that when you push it out, when you're trying, it hasn't been pushed out yet. But if you're just thinking it, it has a tendency to stay put. Meaning you can get it into your heart, but you may not be able to say it. It's like when somebody has something very important that they want to say, a lot of times they wait and they can't get it, until eventually it's swallowed back in. So this is the idea of Shabbos. That's how this is explained elsewhere. That's what he means. He says that what was missing before there was Shabbos, Ba'al Shabbat, Ba'al Menucha. That when Shabbos came, now there was rest. What do you mean by rest? That until now Hashem was pushing out. But now, meaning from the mind to the mouth, as it were. Like if Hashem was a person, it would be like from his thoughts, his plans about what to do in reality, it came out to his mouth. And it actually became a reality that's outside of him. Came Shabbos, and everything returned to the source. Where? In the mind. Which is why Melacha is asur on Shabbos. Because what does Melacha mean? Melacha means taking from the inside and pushing it out. All the Melachas. That's why, what's the first Melacha which is mentioned in the Torah, and the first Melacha in the Gemara? You just learned this. It's Yot Shabbat. Why do you start with Melechet Totzah? Because it's like telling you, understand that all the Melachos of Shabbos are to fill the world, meaning to take out from the source and to bring it into the world. That's a Melacha. That's what it does. It's all taking from one Rishus to the other. From one, how do you say Rishus? We had a name for it.
My brain is slowed down to a steady hold.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's the explanation. So once Shabbos came, all the words that were coming out could go back to their source. So that's what he means, that even in man, there's this thing that I have to expend a lot of energy to get the words out. To get them out from where? From the heart. Especially words that are in the heart. But you have to work hard to get them out. But even if you're talking about just coming from the brain to the heart, so even then they have a tendency to go back up into the brain. They don't want to be revealed.
Sometimes you say stupid words.
What?
Sometimes people say stupid words.
Ken, but that's what we said. That's talking without thinking. That's different. That because we have, it's almost like because we have a brain. So some people are just a good flash. They're a good light bulb. They're like a battery. Because you have a brain, it always works. It doesn't care what you do with it. So the mouth and the whole vocal system, because we were already given it was given to us, it can work on empty. Just saying nonsense, nothing. That's called dvarim b'telim. The whole point is that we use it in order to express something that comes from the mind. So we do think about what we're going to say. נמצא שאי אפשר להיקרא בשם אור השם ולא נתפס בשם אור וזיו כלל, כי אם על ידי המשכות והשתלשלות המדרגות רבות, שיהיה נתפס האור כמו בעשייה גשמית, כמו שכתוב כולם בחוכמה עשית. So what have we found? That if the words of Hashem are like fire, and fire has a tendency to go back to its source, הלוקות דברי כאש נאום השם, so nothing can be called illuminated with the name of God and be seen as illuminated in that way unless the light has found a way to capture, to hold on to something physical. And that's what it means when it says kulam b'chokhmah asita. You've made them all in wisdom. The wisdom here is like the fire. And you made them means that the fire has to hold on to some kind of fuel. And when it holds on to some kind of fuel, then it illuminates. But otherwise it remains dark.
Well, Shabbat, yes, I'm finished. My brain has shut down.
So we're going to see each other tomorrow at 8?
That's what Hashem go for a walk.
Very good. Tomorrow we're going to come to the interesting part here. Because he's going to blow our minds. Completely.
The truth is, I thought myself I won't come. But then I decided that if I do that, then it's the end of the world.
The end of what?
It's the end of the world.
Ah,
The
no,
Shabbat
okay.
Shuva.